Alright, so we have the cold steel hand axe here, and I'm going to talk for a second about the ways that I plan on modifying this to make it just a better cutter, more nimble, cutting through hard targets and light targets a bit easier. First of all, a lot of the weight, so if I just balance it on my finger, roughly half of the weight is from this point back, is in this back portion of the head. And so that's mainly where we're going to be taking material off of. It's got the thickest steel along there. Cold steel tends to overbuild their things to make them just destruction proof, which is cool if you plan on banging it against, shed walls and cinder blocks and stuff like that. But if you're trying to make a nice light cutting tool, then we can thin this out quite a bit. We can take weight off of these sides here and barrel the edges so that it is thinner near the top and bottom of the head and thicker in the middle to maintain structural stability. We can flatten out this back section there. You can see that's got a pretty thick back end there. We don't need that. A flat surface is going to give us, first of all, a hammer end. It's going to give us some nice looking angles as we pull these flat sections back toward the back of the head. And the biggest thing that I'm probably going to do to the back section here is take this curve up further a little bit before bringing it back down toward the middle of the eye so that I can make two bottom lugs over on the bottom of the axe head. And that's going to take weight right off of this thickest section of the head right here. And this is thick enough to where you really don't need anywhere near this much material there. As thick as that is, that join right there, that's going to be plenty strong no matter how deeply I take this curve up. So we're going to do weight reduction over here on this part of the axe head just to liven it up a little bit. That's not going to make it any weaker. It's just going to make it move nicer. And then this grind that it has here is relatively shallow. You don't see grinds this shallow on blades that don't have quite as much distal taper as their Marshall historical counterparts. So because this has an okay distal taper, but not as extreme as we would hope to see, I'm going to take this grind back a little bit to make that edge a little bit more acute, eliminate any secondary bevel that it might have on there, and those combined should still leave it with plenty of mass to hit hard like an axe should, but it should just make it that little bit finer, that little bit lighter and more maneuverable, so it really handles like a true blue weapon. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Alright, so this is the cold steel Viking hand axe post-modification, and it's got a little bit of rust and a little bit of oil still on it, and the finish is pretty rough because I wanted to do this relatively quickly. But so the first major change that you'll see is the edge here. You can see I've taken the bevel pretty far back. It used to be maybe a half inch from the edge. Now it's probably 3/4 to an inch from the edge. The reason it's not a smooth line is because I tried to make it convex, going back into the flatter section of the blade. So that's why you get this wobble along the edge there, because I didn't want a hard line to disrupt cutting. I don't know if it actually does, but I get the gut feeling that it makes a difference, and it certainly isn't going to hurt. Then I changed the actual profile under here a little bit. I took a little bit of width off of this end for the sake of taking material off of there. Notice how that is by far the thickest part of the axe. So I wanted to take material off of right there to reduce the weight, because I can do that without compromising the structural integrity at all. So, and I did think it makes a difference in terms of handling. The most drastic change, though, is undoubtedly to the eye. Cold steel has a tendency to overbuild a lot of their products for the sake of durability, and we're not smashing cinder blocks with these. We prefer them to handle like the historical originals, which tend to be a little bit more delicate. If they're dedicated fighting weapons, they tend to be a little more specifically engineered. So what you can see is that the wall of this eye is much thinner because this is not receiving a whole lot of stress, not nearly enough to break through this steel. So if you're wanting to shave off weight, this is a great place to do it. I have made it narrower in this axis as well. Also for the sake of taking off weight, I have taken quite a bit of material off of the back here and off of the front to give it these lugs on the bottom. And aside from that, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but the center of the eye is now thicker than the edges. I've barreled it. So if my hand here is the, is the part of the eye that's sitting against the wood. It's essentially curved in a dome over that, so it's thicker in the center rather than at the edges. That way you maintain a strong, rigid, structurally sound band of metal going around the center, and thin out towards the top and bottom, simply for the purpose of weight reduction. And it sounds like I'm nickel and diming, trying to get as much weight off of this from a bunch of different places as possible. And individually, all of these places are not shedding that much metal, but on aggregate, it does handle quite a bit better now. It recovers a little bit quicker. It starts the swing a little bit quicker. It's just an overall more agile weapon, and it often leaves the bottom of water bottles sitting on the stand because the edge is now more acute, and you're not going to chop wood with it or hit cinder blocks or whatever and not have it get damaged, but it'll cut the things that it's supposed to cut better now. So yeah, the cold steel Viking hand axe modified.